fight the bill till the bill. Sorry.
I forgot to record this.
I have my audio.
Only remembering now. Oh my gosh.
Is that okay with everybody that we're recording? We won't share this publicly unless you're okay with, maybe pieces of it, or if you're okay with it, we'll share the whole thing. Let's get it.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm an honest person, I'll be honest about anything. So I have nothing to hide.
We'll get it recorded, and then at the end, if there's something that you say like, "Oh, I meant for that to be off the record," especially you, Tina. We don't want to throw you under the bus. So
yeah, and I've got about 10 more minutes, and then I've got to get on something else. So,
all right. Well, let me finish reading this, and I want to talk a bit about House Bill 208 also, because when Mel was saying that about hybrid, he can't do hybrid. That was taken away from him when the governor lost his executive powers at the beginning of the session. That made what he did to grant NTI illegal. And so they came up with House Bill 208 to retroactively fund NTI so that the problem that they had created could magically be solved. And in that, the Tea Partiers, and I think that's part of what I heard when I came in too, the Tea Partiers got involved and wanted to use House Bill 208 to force everyone back in person. That's their political agenda. They want us all in person, all exposed to each other, all there to take the test, because that's how they make money, is off the privatization of education and setting us up to fail so they can test and prove that we're failing so they can justify their charter schools. And they need the data. They need that data. So this is, it's not untrue that he couldn't do hybrid, because they made that part of their bill. And you even could hear the radical Tea Party libertarian groups wanting the bill killed. Even Bluegrass Institute for Public Policy came out and said the bill needs to die, even though they were the ones that fought for the bill in the first place, because it didn't have enough harmful, hateful, racist things in it, is why they wanted it to die. They wanted to put us back out over the barrel, to have to beg and plead for funding some other way, because that's how they keep us at their mercy. And so then it expired at the end of last school year. And when we started this school year, we were left with zero flexibility whatsoever, which is why we need this special session. So all of that I thought was worth sharing, just so people know the history, because it's very confusing, and it's very easy for them to just point fingers back and forth and go, "Oh no, they did. Oh, they did." Yeah. So we need to understand. Yeah, but you played a part too, and you have some responsibility. Why are they not helping us fight? Why is Marty telling principals? This is part of what I wrote down that this educator told me as well. She said he's telling principals to stop talking about it, that we're going to have in person regardless, so just quit talking about it. And that COVID data.
Talking about what? Talking about hybrid, talking about
any flexibility whatsoever. Just and the dashboard, like he doesn't want us to showcase absences from quarantines and cases. Like he wants us to stop talking about all of that, because that just makes it harder for them to get people to get in line and get with the program. So he's told principals to downplay this. So her answer was, why would I waste my time on that when I have students who are coming to school every day, and I'm spending my time focusing on she herself not getting COVID, and she is vaccinated. She said a friend of mine's sister died from it yesterday, from COVID. This is a Black educator. They are impacted by COVID much more than white communities are. So that was part of her point too. She said kids are coming to school. Black kids are coming to school saying they feel like they're being set up to die. They don't want to die. Half of us are saying we need to be in person, and the other half is saying we don't. So what are we supposed to do? And it's the people who could be making other arrangements who are the ones wanting to force school to be in person. Like they can do the walkers, they can become walkers because they live close to their schools. Our West Louisville families don't have that option. And so, and then the carpool pickup line is getting longer because people are able to take their kids off the bus and pick them up. Again, our West Louisville families don't have that option. So the inequities are horrendous, and that is what we need to be focusing on. And this is life or death for our Black community. So, we can't just treat this like, it's just another bill and another special session, and it is what it is, and we'll do whatever they tell us. That is not an acceptable answer. Some of them, she said, some of them just want babysitters, and she wasn't talking about the Black community. She's talking about the white community again, because she said, because the Black kids aren't making it to school. They're either having to wait an hour for a bus, They may have a family member who died. And white families are not that personally affected by COVID, so they can't even relate. So we're forcing white families, and I'm including myself as a white family. I know I'm a white person, but we are forcing our most vulnerable community members back to school because of what we are capable of doing about it, and not taking into account the barriers that we've put in place that our most vulnerable families can't.
How about the option for the Pathfinders program?
Oh, we're on a waiting list.
How long is the waiting list? Has that been published?
Well, my kids are on it. I added them
I heard
because I was like,
12
this
months.
is not looking good for us because everyone's talking about test and stay, which is not helpful. It's not
Right.
a solution. And that's what they want to push. That's what I'm seeing Oldham County do. And that's what I saw Indiana is doing. So I'm assuming that's what Mr. Polio is probably thinking we're going to go for.
Well, and it was a very much, I mean, they had a speaker on it specifically on when.
Yeah. My husband was like,
Test
get
and
them on the
stay.
waiting list if you haven't already. And the waiting list when I last looked was like 700 kids long.
I think,
I mean, can you check it online?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Can you
Were you-
check it online, or was somebody just published that it was 700? I just didn't know how long it is.
No, so I feel like I'm reading news articles and things like that. But when I signed up, they were like, we're on a waiting list and we're only focused on our the kids that got enrolled on time. And
Oh,
last
right.
news article I had read had mentioned like 700 kids. I'm sure it's well past that because more and more parents. So that's where I'm finding people. Gay, you were talking about reaching out and finding people. Where I'm finding people is I'm reading news articles that are relative to the situation and the concerns, and I'm reading the comments of parents, and I'm like, hey, we're over here, come join us, please help. 'Cause
Right.
I don't know what else to do. I've never done anything like this before. I mean, I've managed businesses, but I've not actually, come up and said, okay, this is ridiculous. These are our kids. This is not a tool in a political agenda, and I draw the line at children. Okay.
Mhm.
Go if adults want to go behave like children, that's one thing, but we need to be better role models to our children, and our decision process right now is showing that we're only still out for ourselves and bottom line. So I have a little problem with that.
I have a related hybrid question, which I'm going to call de facto hybrid. I mean, they can say in the state legislature, you can't have hybrid. But if you've got a third of your kids or half of your kids quarantining,
And
you
not getting
have de
educated,
facto hybrid.
Right.
and they're not getting an education while they're in quarantine. I showed
right.
up to a PTA meeting expecting other parents to show up while Rose and I we were in like the second or third round of quarantine for our school. And we kept waiting to hear from a teacher about what we were supposed to do for their education during their 10-day quarantine. And we weren't hearing anything. So there happened to be a PTA meeting that was impromptu, and we thought parents were going to show up outraged. That's not what happened. So Rose and I and one other woman were the only people that showed up. And this other woman was complaining because her weekend plans were ruined because her child was quarantined. And then I was like, no one's going to say anything. I'm going to. So I
Right.
spoke up and I was like, what are we supposed to do to educate our children during this 10 days? And Mr. Perkins is like, what? No one has contacted you? And I'm like, no. And I have reached out to the teacher and not heard anything back. And he's like, oh no, we have a whole, you go into the Google Classroom. And I'm like, no one has contacted us. There's nothing in her Google Classroom. Okay. And so the very next day, 3 emails go out school-wide to everyone, and it's all set up overnight, just like that. And
Now,
all of a
is
sudden,
it
It was
Now,
is it-
absolutely
is it through your classroom teacher? I thought there were district staff teachers who were doing good quarantine kids. That's what we were told.
we had no live education. My daughter received no information about live education. Rose did. Her experience is a little different. I don't know if it's because I proactively quarantined my child, so they didn't consider her quarantined. But there was no live education offered to Austin at all. Instead, her assignments for the period of time that she was going to be out were dumped into the classroom. And when I contacted the teacher, because my platform looked different than her child's platform, when they're in the same classes, they have a different homeroom teacher. That's the only difference. But they're both in the same programs. And her classroom looked different. My teacher said, no, it's correct. but her assignments were there. So she managed to do all the assignments. There was no live stream education for her. What Rose experience is different. And I'll let you tell you about that.
There was NTI offered and I was able to find it, but I had to look for it. I really did have to look for it. And it was absolutely worthless. It was maybe 15 minutes a day for my oldest one who is in 4th grade and my 1st grader. It had nothing to do with what they were learning in class. Absolutely zero, nothing. It was just like, and this, I don't know if it was through Jefferson County or Kentucky Department of Education, who put this on, I'm not sure. But this woman was trying to get the children to write the word, I keep hearing thin. I'm like, why are they trying to get my 1st grader to write the word thin? I look over there and she was saying then. She was trying to say then, but her accent was so thick that you couldn't understand what she was saying. So so both of them were very much worthless. And they came home after they got back to school and they had a packet this thick of makeup work to do. And he tried to throw that at the grader and completely overwhelmed. And I don't know even what half of it was. And luckily my 4th grader is absolutely awesome and she did it on her own, but I've been seeing with the 1st grader, we still are behind.
So the classes have continued while she's quarantined. My son had this problem because I ended up quarantining him for 4 days because I felt like he was symptomatic and I wanted to make sure he was okay. And our family was tested and we're fine. But during that time, he got back, he goes, I missed so much. So this version of all in with quarantine is super disruptive because they're not getting continuous, consistent education. If they had 2 days in and 2 days out, then they're getting consistency and they're all in the same place in the program.
I think that statement is very true. And we can either proactively do it in a way that works best for us and our community, or we can just sit back and have things happen to us. And that's when our most vulnerable and marginalized communities get harmed the most again. Like always, this falls down on the least of these,
Yeah. So from a legislative perspective, then we want the local control and we want a hybrid to be an option that the local districts can select from. I mean, that's from your perspective, what I'm looking for over the next week.
Tina, someone sent me something. I can't remember. I emailed someone and they sent it to me and it had something about, it's Jason Glass. Okay. I emailed him my letter and he sent me this thing saying he understood the issue and he talked about hybrid, but then he sent me this document. And then that same day, the document was released into the news. And the document says that it is COVID-19 guidance for schools and districts dated August 27th. And it says guidance for offering a hybrid performance-based schedule. And I'm reading it and I got to be really honest. I'm really honest. I don't understand it. It actually sounds like we're allowed to offer a hybrid option if we ask for it. And the wording is very confusing to me. I don't understand really what I'm reading. And so I kind of was left going, I don't know what I'm reading right now. And then it was suddenly released in the news and it kind of talked about these options. It kind of talks like they're possible, but then, so I'm thinking, okay, this says it's possible. So I re-emailed both of my kids. I got an elementary and a middle schooler, and I emailed both of the principals and I sent a copy. I've got the document. I can send it to anybody who wants it, but I emailed it as a link in there. And I was like, oh, I got this document that says this is an option. Is it an option? So I thought that what it was telling me is that I needed to ask and that it was available if I asked. That was kind of what I took away from this letter. That's very confusing. Okay.
I've just put my email in the chat.
Like, no, the principals replied with no, it's not an option. So,
right.
So what sure they pass the buck again? They each are pointing at each other saying they could be doing that, but no, there's no path to do it.
I mean,
educators that I've talked to have said we've done performance-based grading before, and it's basically just they have to complete certain measures, they have to show up, they have to complete tasks, they have to do certain things, and we mark them present. When we're in certain crisis situations or dealing with certain issues, then we have that flexibility, at least at some of our schools, to do that. So why you're being told no, I don't know. I think that is definitely something that we need to keep pushing on our board members locally.
You know what document I'm talking about then.
Seen that link. Yep.
You were mentioning that what the Tea Party people were saying in this other group that I watch. I guess you could call me a kind of a Trojan horse at this point. But this other group I'm watching is talking about the things that Gay is talking about. She's like, what they're saying, they're rallying on their side. Okay. The things that she's saying we need to be doing, that they're doing that already. And they are sharing where Gay was pointing out that they kind of push this other privatized school. There's literally a post with a link to a school that a church is starting. And they're like, if you're not happy over here with what's happening at JCPS, here's a link to this school, that they're trying to start up. So she's literally, everything she's saying, I can literally tell you, I'm reading and seeing in these other places. And I'm seeing other parents among them that are concerned as well. And they're not super thrilled with this all in with the quarantine policies, the way the quarantine is working. I know everybody wants to do test and stay or just go and pretend it's all okay, but we're going to have some serious regrets as the weather gets cold and people are crammed in together, and it's really, really ugly.
I'm hoping we can get, Tina, you can make the argument that you cannot legislate against reality. I mean, you can pass a law that makes it illegal to ever rain again, but it's going to rain.
Right.
And you can say you can't have hybrid, but if you've got a third or a half of your kids out, you can call it what you want. Don't like that word? Let's call it toast.
Right. I tell you what, I've got to jump off to jump on something else. But I put my email in there, Mel, if you'll forward to me that document, and then Gay can, text me or whatever, anytime, any other thoughts. But I do appreciate your time and kind of sharing the perspective and the thoughts. And I'm in some special ed, so I'm not like I'm pulling kids back and forth from classrooms. But then finally my daughter was at Wilder fourth and fifth grade many years ago. And I can only imagine that carpool line right now, because it was forever when we were there. So
we're going to have some parents in Frankfurt Monday. We're going to gather at 9:00 before the session starts at 10. So look for us. And we're encouraging parents to bring their kids. They can take educational opportunity. They can take up to 5 days. So why not? If schools are crammed or you're on quarantine, I guess quarantine, they should probably stay home. But you know what I'm saying? If you're keeping your kids home because it's not safe, there are places in Frankfurt that you might as well come. We'll be outside. If you want to stay outside, you can social distance inside, and you'll have a better adult to child ratio, so you can make sure everybody's staying masked and following guidelines. Better than being crammed into the school. So even if you're crammed into schools, if people come to Frankfurt instead and have their field trip. So if lawmakers, especially the Democratic lawmakers, wouldn't mind maybe even hinting that, this is a great historical moment and would make a great field trip, and there's, kind of reiterate some of that or even lead with it, we'll back you up. It'd be a great time to get people to come to Frankfurt and know that they can do so legally, And then I think homeschooling is something that we should be supporting parents in doing to protect their kids while it's not safe. And I don't know why the district isn't supporting those families and is allowing the predators to siphon them from us. So those are things. But I know you got to go, so I just want to throw that.
I do. All right. Thank you all so much.
I was under the impression meeting on Tuesday.
Oh, Gay said Monday, but she means Tuesday.
I did mean Tuesday. Thank you.
She meant Tuesday.
Thank you again. Okay. And ladies, stick around because we can keep talking if you like.
That's what I was thinking. It's a Tuesday. I think if we could get 10 people there dressed in red, and their meeting doesn't start till 2, but they will be there in the halls plotting and scheming early.
I had 10 o'clock. It doesn't start till,
They got something at 2,
oh, I have 10
but I
o'clock on.
forgot what it was.
Well, we can confirm that then.
Well, I know the other side is definitely trying to gather. They've got things posted.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this is not good because they don't really care. They just want them in the classroom. They don't care if they're quarantined. They don't care. And then
And
we've
why
got,
my kid in the classroom so much? Why? I think we need to ask them that question. Why do you care if my kid's in school? Why send your kid to school? But why are we forcing everyone to school?
I don't know. We also saw like some really scary stuff with like parents out there are scared, and we all are. But there was one parent when we went to pick up our kids from quarantine, she kept going, but he's wearing a mask. He's wearing a mask. And I'm like, it's like we talked to Mr. Vera, or Yvonne, sorry.
Thank you.
She's like, it's like Swiss cheese. And she's going, aren't they safe? He was wearing a mask. And I'm like, you can't be lying to yourself like that. You can't. You've got to be real that you've got precautions, and we got to take all the precautions. There's going to be so much
It's
regret.
not just masks. It's ventilation, which like 4 schools have. It's deep cleaning, which we know
Not
went
happening.
out that window because they don't have Wednesday to clean up anymore and do all that spraying. I mean, I think they have a guy come in we have our usual custodians. Well, I saw a whole bunch of people I'd never seen before, and then I put 2 and 2 together and figured, oh, they're the deep cleaning crew. But I stay late. They come on a Wednesday, and I'm here to tell you that they're not here every week. That is for damn sure. They're here every 3 to 4 weeks, which is something. I mean, please send them, keep sending them,
Right.
but
Not
more
enough.
is better.
So, and I heard you guys when I was plugging things in, also talking about like, are we the counter protesters? Are they counter protesters? I'm not even sure anymore who was first, but we're there in support of rational thinking lawmakers, whoever they are, and in protest of those who are using our children as political pawns. And then there's a 10 to 15% on either extreme. Our Democratic allies who are going to vote the way we want them to vote makes up 10% to 15% of the legislature. The right-wing radicals hopefully also only make up 10 to 15. So you've got your moderate conservatives who really ran for office to serve and care for their community, and that's who we're hoping to reach. I think giving the radical protesters enough rope, the hypocrisy shines through, and it's just a matter of let's engage them in as much conversation as we can, because they'll show everybody what they are made of if they just keep talking. And so they're there for whatever their political leaders dog whistle. They're like Pavlovian dogs, really. Whatever red meat the Trump base responds to is what they're going to get fed. And they're responding to critical race theory right now. They're responding to the big lie and putting Trump back into office. There's some credible 9/11 threats out there right now. So we also have to be cognizant that these people are capable of some very horrible and dangerous things. Fortunately, 9/11 is on a Saturday, so it won't be a day when we are in special session, and also school. But I was thinking of going to Frankfurt with these crazies. I don't want to be around them on 9/11. And I know some of the other people in one of the other groups that I'm in have said, I'm out on 9/11. And so, but this special session could get extended to Saturday. They will hold a session on a Saturday. So we need to just keep that in mind as well. But, you know, they're there for whatever gets them foaming at the mouth.
Are we looking at domestic terrorism from our Republican extremists?
Absolutely. It's
So
tied to the
where
same people who were in DC on January 6th.
where do we find where do I find out what that plan is? How do I find out what that is?
Oh, well, there are deep, dark holes that you can go down that are quite scary, and I don't wish that on anyone.
There's
but-
a guy on Twitter who monitors Parlor and 2 other crazy places,
Okay.
and you know, screenshots.
And you can look at some of the regular usual suspects, as Yvonne likes to call them. Frank Simon is one of the local leaders. He's been
How is he
speaking-
still alive? He was an old man when I moved here.
He's been speaking at our board meetings, if you can call it speaking. He's been slurring angry, hateful, racist statements at our board meetings. And at one of them, he was just, all I could hear him saying was, it's Marxism, it's communism, and then slurring his words. I don't think he was well. And
He's got to be 90 something if he's a day. Seriously, I'm not even exaggerating.
I don't know, but how he still has his medical license is another question, and how he still has people coming to him. But, you know, he's got people in he's a cult leader, if nothing else, and they've got people in their control that they can manipulate. And in fact, he spoke at Central, not this last time, but the time before.
When I was there, oh, tell him what a show that was.
Oh, it was quite interesting. It was very interesting. I have all that recorded, by the way, but he was standing in the foyer talking to a woman who I heard her say, can I come by your office to pick some up? And he said something about a prescription. And so I don't know, I can't tell you exactly if she was a patient or an employee or what, but there was something else going on with some of the people that he had manipulated into speaking that night. So just be aware what these people are capable of. And another one is, his last name is Cooper Ryder. He's running for office. You can kind of watch some. He's the one that made the big post calling for them to show up in Frankfurt on Tuesday. So yeah, they'll be there. I don't know if we want to show up with signs directed at them. You know, sometimes I feel like tell them how, look in the mirror. You want to talk about hateful and divisive, look in the mirror and hold up a mirror at them or something, you know, because they're claiming that teaching CRT is hateful and divisive, when really all it is making them uncomfortable, and they don't like being made uncomfortable. They don't like talking about uncomfortable truths. And so, you know, this special session is more of that, more of us getting together and talking about uncomfortable things so that we can make better decisions for everyone instead of just ourselves, those who have typically, historically, always been the benefactor of structural racism. They don't want to dismantle structural racism because they're benefiting. We're benefiting from it.
Yeah, I've kind of gathered from that general extremist that they're afraid there's not enough for them. There's not going to be enough for them. That's the general. Because I question, like, what is the root motivation for you? And the more they talk, I'm like, you're afraid that there's not enough for you. There's not going to be enough for you, or that you're going to be excluded. That it's a fear. So even though they're propagating fear and anger and hate, at the heart of it, when you ask what is the motivation and really try to understand it, it's that they're afraid there's not going to be enough for them.
Absolutely. It's that you're probably familiar with Stephen Covey. He wrote a book. He's written several books, but one of his books talks about the abundance versus scarcity mentality. And that's just it. So many of us believe that if you do better and you do better and I do better, we all do better. There's plenty to go around. And so we lift each other up. But there are people who feel like if you get more, that means I get less. And a lot of that is taught. A lot of that is taught through the manipulative tactics that this party, the radical right wing, uses to keep its base showing up. So telling people everything's going to be okay doesn't get you to turn out at a board meeting, now does it?
Or, you know, you get someone like me who's just like, really, what are you all doing? This is
exactly. Move over. If you think this is okay, you need to get out of the way. That's where
this is a circus. These are our kids. No, just not with our children. No. I mean, there's got to be a hard line somewhere, and I can't.
Are
One
you
of the-
ladies? Go ahead.
One of the things that worries me is they're going to try to outlaw the ring, basically. They're going to try to outlaw hybrid because for reasons that I do not understand, they see schools open 5 days a week with 2 kids in each class as a victory.
Right.
What's that whole thing with the fund
Okay.
shares? That's how they get their funding. So why can't it just be 176 hours of education or whatever it's required? Why does it have to be butts and chairs?
That's a great point. Who makes that decision? Who makes that law? Who makes that the rule, or that's the standard, or whatever? At this point, I feel like people need to be thinking creatively, and we know that people are capable of coming up with solutions. Even if mine's not the best, it's still something, which is better than offering, I don't care what's going on out there, the whole world can be burning, your kids need to be in school so we get paid. Then maybe we need to look at what determines that they get paid. Maybe that needs to adapt, because we're living in a different world right now.
I don't think it's school pay. I mean, they're using that as a tool, but they live in an alternative reality where the only reason that people lost their jobs and people stopped going to movies, to restaurants, to concerts is because there was a lockdown.
It had
Like-
nothing to do with why we were locked down.
No, right. If you had not had a lockdown, these people would have just gone. When was the last time I was in a restaurant? Oh, let me think. A long time. Soon as this Delta thing came up again. But it's magical thinking. If only we don't have a lockdown, then nothing will happen. Everyone will keep doing what they were doing.
In the sand, it'll all be okay. And you know what? For most of them, it will be, because they have the privilege and they have the less health risk factors than some people. But that doesn't mean everybody's going to be okay. And we're all in this together, aren't we?
Apparently not in the mentality that they're carrying. The mentality is me, I. And that's not enough for me foundation.
I
Which-
just go crazy. You think if there wasn't a lockdown,
Well, here's the
people would
problem.
still be going to
Okay.
restaurants?
Well, let's compare. Okay. One woman in that other group, she was like, let's compare numbers and celebrate our victory and she was like, this time last year we were homeschooling and there was like a 6% positivity rate or whatever. And she's like, she puts up the statistics for now and they're worse. And she's like, I think we're doing pretty good. And I'm like, first of all, I'm baffled.
Yeah.
I am generally baffled that we are doing less now than we have ever done throughout this entire thing. And I don't understand how that's possible.
Look at our hospitals. Like, it is baffling. I don't even know what else to say. I mean, we all see it.
How
So
are we doing less than we've ever done? And now we're in this pivotal moment where it could be a complete collapse. And that's what a lot of people would like to see.
yes, that's what the disaster capitalism mindset is all about. That's what the Koch brothers created, was a disaster capitalism mindset. And they want things, they look for crises so they can come in and buy things cheap and change things around and get their people in place. So if they create a crisis, they're okay with that, because that's just more opportunity for them.
Who are
Yep.
the Koch brothers? I'm not very political, so you'll have to forgive me. Who
One
are
of
the-
them is dead now. Their father was a literal fascist, actually. Their father, they had brought in a German nanny for them and everything. So
Ooh.
it's 4 brothers, but the 2 you care about.
Worked for Hitler, didn't he? He actually worked for Hitler, the dad.
That's true.
Oh,
In the before days, but it was Charles and David. And they're extreme libertarians. And when I first hooked up with Gay, I tracked down every single one in the country. It's not a big secret. They have a website that links them all. I just put them in a spreadsheet for us and connected all the people that were different ones. And at that time, what was that, 4 years ago? They had 63 of these fake. That's the Heritage Foundation is one of them. And
Right.
so they
So it's
don't think there should be public schools. I'm not exaggerating. You can go to their meeting from Michigan where they said that police shouldn't be a public good. And they're extreme libertarians. You get the police protection you personally pay for. The fact that all of these things are cheaper, if there's all of us doing this, there should not be public schools. It should be free market everything. You get insurance if you need fire protection, you get fire insurance and they come to your house. I'm not going to go back on how that used to be the law here and we went to fire departments because that didn't work, but it all, except for highways, they're kind of okay with highways. Really, everything else should be free market.
Because it benefits them to have highways because they got goods.
They have goods, that's true.
Miles across the country.
You don't know the Cokes, but you probably buy their stuff. If you buy any of the paper products made by Kimberly-Clark or Georgia Pacific, you have wiped your butt with a Coke product.
So they're a monopoly because those are two huge companies that make most of, if you're not buying this brand, you're buying that brand, they own them both. Is this
Yeah,
like
there's
a
one
Rothschild
more,
thing?
but they own 2 out of the 3 big ones, yes.
So this is just like a Rothschild type thing. Their name is everywhere. Vanderbilt, Rothschild, it's everywhere.
And then they put together an organization called ALEC, ALEC, which stands for the American
Legislative Exchange Committee. It's one-stop shopping for buying a legislator.
It's lawyers that have come together to write canned legislation that they hand to their lawmakers. And as long as their lawmakers keep introducing these bad laws, they'll continue to fund their campaigns. Oh, and guess what? Guess how they fund their campaigns? By siphoning money out of local communities, such as through charter schools, vouchers, so they can fund their billionaire entrepreneurs that are their buddies that are running these charter schools, so they can put their monies into their houses and their yachts and then make super PAC campaign donations that we can't trace. And so Jane Mayer, who writes for the New Yorker and I think New York Times also, but
no, it's the New Yorker, but she gets interviewed on NPR all the time.
She wrote the book Dark Money, which I listened to on audio a few years ago, which really was a light bulb for me. And then she recently wrote a piece called the Big Money Behind the Big Lie that again points to the Heritage Foundation, points to these groups that Yvonne mentioned at the beginning that have been behind this all along. And we've got a few here in Kentucky too that we've been going toe to toe with. And the Catholic organization is now gone to the dark side. They've got their own shills out there peddling lies in order to get vouchers to fund their private schools, their religious schools. And
that's what I was seeing in that group. They were promoting a group as so they're actually getting money out of these schools, and it's all about money, all of it.
It's all about.
And even the pension scandal has ties to all of this dark money campaign funds. And you see this doublespeak coming out of people like Jason Nemes. Jason Nemes keeps getting a union endorsement.
Oh, don't get me started on Jason.
And he keeps throwing teachers and their pensions under the bus. And somehow they make these backroom deals that don't need to be made that really make you question who is really on our side that's supposed to be protecting
Yvonne,
people.
was that the man that you told me that he emailed me? Was that him?
That's him.
Oh, fantastic. I was so excited about him. I really thought he was on my side. The email was just great.
They're so good at that. Double speak.
Oh, they'll tell you whatever you want to hear and hope you don't find out how they voted.
Yes, we're making progress. That's great. Absolutely not.
No, I'm not fooling
Me
myself
too.
at all. I see a good solid following to that. Just get the butts in the chairs. And the more that I listen, that's all I'm hearing is get the butts in the chairs. They don't care how, get them in the chairs.
So you asked that question a minute ago, and I don't think this answer came up, and I think it's probably one of the biggest driving factors. Like, it's a myriad of reasons why they want the butts in the chairs, but I think one of the biggest driving factors is because that's how they get the tests. And if they don't have enough kids take the test, then their data is useless, and so they have to throw it all out. So the best way for them to administer tests is to get kids in the building, although now they're talking about doing the map testing online. And
No way.
the virtual kids are going to be taking map testing, I think, this week. So that's another reason to pull your kids out and go to Frankfurt. Reject the tests, reject them using data points on your children. My child always scored good on these tests, so I always thought, oh, let him take it, let him take it. I didn't know that by participating in these tests, I was actually participating in the harm that was caused to others. And so if I knew then what I know now, like, I'd be out there not only telling my kid not to take the test, but making sure that all of his classmates know as well. And let's opt out.
So
Yeah, because it's part of the disaster capitalism. You say schools don't need money, and you cut more and more money, and then you solve the problem you created by saying, you know, public schools are terrible. You know what we need? Vouchers for private schools.
Instead of, that's the lifeboat theory. If we can get kids on lifeboats, at least we save those kids. But the thing is the boat wasn't sinking until you shot holes in it. So let's stop shooting the big boat, holes in the big boat, and patch the ones that we've created, instead of putting a few kids that can, get to the front of the line because they've got money or power or influence. They're the only ones that are going to benefit from this new world order that they want to create by destroying our public schools. Is the wealthy. They want education reserved for their kids and not for the masses. It's really
well, because it's
really
a 2-for-1. If you pay less for schools, you save on your taxes.
well, plus
And then on the other end, you grift at the schools. Can't beat that.
A lot of these people that are raising 10 kinds of Hades, it turns out that their kids are in private schools. I'm like, why are you even here? Why are you part of this conversation? I can't afford a private school. There's one right across the street from me that I can't afford. Okay.
And you could. What about your neighbor's kids? And what about the kids down the street that we supposedly care about closing achievement gaps for? What about that?
They don't.
How's putting a few kids in a lifeboat going to help them?
It doesn't.
They're not the ones that will get in that lifeboat.
No, but
No, they're
setting
not.
them up for failure. They're winning right now because with the way things are, with this all bodies in the chairs and the way the quarantine thing is happening, first of all, the quarantine's not helping prevent it from spreading, because we can see that. It's self-explanatory from my thing earlier. But you've got, when they're not there and they're not getting that education consistently, like when they're in the quarantine, and my daughter sat there and did her work on her own. Okay. There was no instruction. If there was instruction, it was a YouTube video, and some of those are pretty good. They've been lifesavers, honestly, but they're winning because some of these kids are not logging in. They're not doing their assignments at all. It's not able, or there's no one there to guide them. Some of them are probably never even mentioned to them. And then, but if they have that 2 days in and then that 2 days at home on the virtual, at least that 2 days in is consistent and it's quality education, because there's less children in those chairs. That means the teacher has more time to focus on those 14 kids they got in that classroom, and they're there and they're learning. I don't understand. There has to be some other, they're using the butts in the chairs as an excuse. So we need to take away that excuse.
It really is. I think a lot of it is just magical thinking. If their kids are in 5 days a week, everybody go to work, and it will be.
Okay.
But they're blaming the funding.
It'll be December 2019. Everything will be exactly the way it was. Why you would think that, I don't know, but go you.
We're in a different world. We got to adapt and we got to think differently. We need clear, like new ideas. We got to be like, okay, this rule cannot apply during this period of time, and we can't put an end date on this period of time because we don't know what's going to happen next. So we need to evolve and adapt. We need a new rule.
That work session that they did a few days ago where they did talk sanity, one of the solutions was to give the schools the ability to choose last year's 10-day count and have some flexibility on their numbers so that they are not feeling all this pressure. So really what they're doing is they're holding SEEK formula over their heads. They're saying, we're not going to give you your SEEK funding. You're not going to get your per pupil allocations unless they're in seats. And so if they're virtual or quarantined or whatever, that money's at risk. And so even as a superintendent, Dr. Polio looks irresponsible. And he can't be put in a position to look like he's just like, screw it, let's just do it. Let the consequences fall where they may, because we're going to fire him if he does that, right? The community would be outraged and probably rightfully so. So he has to look like he's following prudent man rule. And so we can't count on him, I guess is what I'm saying. We can't count on him, even if he did know that being there in person is wrong. He can't be the one to throw caution to the wind and tell everybody just stay home. So I hear what you're saying, though. Let's take that threat away. So when Tina was asking us what kind of things could she push for, pushing for them to honor that another way to count the kids in school so that they're not worried about the constant butts and seat pressure. Of course, we're going to see the hand of the other side because they're going to say, oh, no, you can't do that, because then how will we get our agenda pushed? I mean, how would, I don't know, we'll come up with something. You know, that's how we keep these conversations, like I said earlier, keep these conversations going, because that's how they show us and the world who they are. And each time they do that, we get a new group of people that we say, watch them now, because when we say this, they're going to do that. And then when they do the thing we said they were going to do in front of you, then you're like, oh my God, you know, but every time it's a new awakening for a new batch of people. But we're gaining momentum. The truth is the truth is the truth. You can't unsee what we have seen. You can't. And so they may have more people showing up in Frankfurt than we do, but they follow the latest shiny object, and they're easily misled. And in fact, it's so funny to watch them at board meetings, because people will get up and speak and say things like, all history matters, which kind of sounds like all lives matter. And they'll start clapping, and then we're like, wait a minute, that means that Black history matters. Wait, what? Did I just applaud? Like, they don't even know that they're applauding the other side until, it's, if there's not somebody, holding that flag that says applaud. They don't know to applaud or not to applaud, because they don't really understand. So I think we're on the right track, and I think there's enough of us, and we've got enough time. I mean, Yvonne, how many fights have we been in together?
It's been 6 years.
And
we still have a pension, and there was no takeover.
We fought off a lot of things. We haven't won them all, but when they're corrupt and they can do whatever they want in the back rooms that we're not allowed access to, then that's what it's going to be. But we've got receipts, and at some point, just like the people that showed up on January 6th in DC, they're going to court now. We can take people to court. I think we should. I think that at the end of the day, people need to be held accountable for the crimes against humanity that have been committed here in Jefferson County and across Kentucky and across this country. And I'm not going anywhere. It doesn't sound like you ladies are either. So let's do it.
Well, and one thing to point out too, they have all the money, but they really don't have that many people.
No,
really.
True. Because that's what I'm saying. That's what got me commenting, and that's what started. Our group is like, I think we just reached 50 members in a week, but that's not much. But there's people coming that I don't know how they're finding us now. They're just trickling in one by one. But I was harvesting people that were constantly commenting and saying things that I'm like, yes, that's what I'm saying. And I'm like, you look like you belong over here. Come join me. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that we can't, even if I fail, at the end of the day, if I spoke up and I said, there's a better way, I don't understand why you're not applying rational thinking here, And I can't even accept or entertain the idea of money and politics as a rational thinking. I can't. We are not living in a time period where the rules of engagement formerly apply. We're not following those rules anymore. This is a new time. We have to adapt. We need new rules. So I don't know how we remove the money, the butts in the chair money problem. I don't know how we do that, or what other idea we say, hey, what is another way that they can measure and justify how people get paid? What is that? What is another way that can be done?
I think we should make a list of who our potential allies are and kind of do some SWOTs on them. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And not forget that KDE is another potential ally. And in fact, it's thanks to them that we still have a mask mandate. And sometimes they're just throwing something at the wall and seeing what fits. And that worked. And I bet they were as surprised as I am that worked, you know? But maybe they could throw something else at the wall now and see if it fits. And the thing about the butts and seats and the SEEK funding formula is the legislature passes the law that has the specific wording of what needs to take place, but then it goes to KDE and they write the regs. And when KDE is led by people like Matt Bevin, the reg and Wayne Lewis and the people that he puts in place, the regs read a lot differently than when they're written by Jason Glass and the people that Andy Bashir put in place. So I think that and we know people on KDE, so we should probably reach out to our allies
and be like, what is another way that you
let's rephrase some of these regulations that still follow the letter of the law, that maybe it's been a few years since we looked at it, but just like they discovered that we can have hybrid according to this really tight box, and it already existed, even though nobody seems to have the political will to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
But I think that these are definitely avenues worth pursuing. And it's a matter of just getting our talking points together and dividing and conquering and getting meetings with these folks and, you know, putting that bug in their ear, you know, because they may not be able to do that thing, but then that sparks another idea. And then they go talk to their friend. And then, you know, before you know it, there's a mask.
I noticed Tina taking notes, and she was like actually shocked at some of the things we were saying. Like, and I'm just like, you look really stunned. And I'm just kind of like, oh, so can I ask some
There's
questions?
no way she could be shocked.
What, Rosie? What?
There is no way she's shocked. She has to have heard this before. There's no way she is shocked. She has to have heard this before. Pessimist, but geez.
I don't know. Her mouth really fell open.
I mean, she is an educator. If she's not aware of it, she's not, she's choosing what information makes it where it needs to go. But I think she's also just kind of naive. And one of my frustrations with her is that she's not radical enough when it comes to protecting our children. And she seems to want to find middle ground and compromise, which there is a time and a place for that, but not when the people you're compromising with are looking for to harm children. And, you know, the predators that have found their way into our legislature, she has to be able to identify who they are and recognize when they're bullshitting. And I can't say that on TV, but so I'll have to edit that out if we play this anywhere. But she doesn't have those filters really to recognize when she's being played. And in fact, she co-sponsored House Bill 208, the bill that I told you that took our hybrid away. And her story would be, if we asked her, is that you should have seen the bill before. It was much worse. I made it better. And, you know, because they listened to my advice, I signed on, you know, but they knew that. They played her. So, and in fact, there's a press release on the LRC website that used her name and made her sound like a hero, because if they can put an educator that's a Democrat and play it up like it's a bipartisan bill, then they can further get away with the things they're getting away with, because that's how they explain it away. But if I was watching when all that was happening, and I was following some of those radical bloggers and video live streamers and listening to them screaming about their outrage about, you know, they're going to let children learn from home. Oh my God, you know, like it was an act. It's a show. And you just, if you watch it long enough, you see it. I too want to believe that everybody has the best intentions and that they're coming at this with good faith, but I've been burned. I've seen us be burned enough times to know that you can't wait until they've burned you to find out that that's how they operate.
If we fail, where do we go next?
So long term, the November of 2022 elections is what we focus on. And even just knowing that we have that to hold over their heads will hopefully keep the moderates on our side. This shouldn't be a political partisan decision, keeping kids safe. And they, luckily enough of them have districts in their own communities that they've heard from their own superintendents, and they've heard from their parents and students and families that they know that something must be done. And we need to be communicating, especially Jefferson County needs to be communicating with all lawmakers, not just our own, because most of them are on our side already, except for Jason Nemes and Julie Rocky Adams, my senator.
Don't forget Jerry Miller.
Thank God, I hear he's retiring.
Really? Yes. Yes.
Most
yes.
of Jefferson County knows that people are watching and they're going to do the right thing, even the Republicans. The few that don't are the shills for the Koch agenda, and they'll come up with an excuse, and we've heard them all before, you know, so we're not really expecting much from them. But we also need to hold union leaders accountable who continue to endorse them, because that just shows us that we know whose side they're on as well. And we've been trying to do that. Like, it's just a matter of continuing to conduct the orchestra until the song is over, because I think we're coming into the final stanza at this point. What do you think, Yvonne?
I think that what they think, you know, the extremists think this is going to get them a blowout re-election. And
they're going to get Trump back in office.
Yeah, right. I saw the big sign, 24 or before. Yeah, whatever. You know,
that have this mindset. It's an illness.
It is an illness, but
It's
you know, even people who, I mean, they're going to start having issues in their own hospitals where they're packed with kids. Right. And who's the one who sent our children to the hospital? Yeah. Samantha Maddox. I mean, I can name them now. Damon Thayer, all those, Ralph Alvarado. Oh my God, these guys are so horrible. You know, I'm just saying.
So we know they're not going to vote with us, but they don't have to. You know,
they don't have to. We'll just get rid of them next time, because
we got really close.
So
go ahead.
Okay, so Oldham County has their own whole deal, and they make their own rules. Like, they're doing test and stay. Okay. And so I'm looking when our district is making these decisions, are we looking at what others around us are doing? Because I feel like someone's going to say, we need to look at what so-and-so's doing, and is this working for them? Part of the problem is the numbers that are reported in our spreadsheet are not accurate.
Right.
Okay, they're not. There's no way they tested all these children and that my child's school went from 100 kids down to like 5. That is not possible. Okay. We had like 100 on quarantine, and then they did the test and stay, and then all of a sudden the spreadsheet was taken down. The original spreadsheet was taken down. A new one was placed, and now there's 2 available, a year to date and like a regular one. I don't understand why all that's happening. Why are we making more spreadsheets? And then the numbers were like it had gone down from like 100 and I feel like there was more. I really do. My son's over at Thomas Jefferson Middle. So I was like, it was 100 down to like 5. And I was like, there is no way. And then my son is coming home and I'm saying, he's going, Mom, only 15 kids were in my ELA class. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I counted them today. There was only 15 out of like 30. And I'm like, okay, so there's a quarantine happening. And then I go and I look at the spreadsheet and it says 5 kids.
Josephine, my oldest, she said there were, I think, 17 in her class.
7?
17. There was, and I think I want to say there's 29 kids in her class, but there were 17 missing from her 4th grade homeroom.
What's the dashboard say?
I don't think they're all out with a cold.
2? No, 2. The dashboard said like 2, Rose. That there's only 2 kids, and it's like I think there's only like they're saying there's only like 2 on quarantine. We
It's
also
impossible.
have- well,
On Friday, there were 11 out of one kindergarten class.
Well, and they also say allow 24 to 48 hours. Why? If you're entering it into a database right now, why do we need to wait? If it's serious enough for them to not come to school, it's serious enough to put it on the dashboard. There's no reason to be delaying. There's no data input delay. And plus it's being guarded at the district level because they're only releasing the numbers once an hour. And on 2 separate occasions, I caught errors in their releases that had big blips in them, like it skyrocketed for just an hour and then fell back down. And I'm like, they forgot to turn that filter on that prevents us from seeing the truth. And so the truth got out there a couple of times. And in fact, people call me making things up and reading things into it. But the thing is sites were added. Like Blue Lick Elementary was added to the list just for that hour and then it disappeared. But I've got a teacher from Blue Lick messaging me going, my school's not showing up. So it matches the theory matches the reality that I'm seeing and hearing from people. So, you can try to write me off as crazy. That's what they do. But
well, when you're okay, so part of the thing is before I say anything, like all the things that I was telling Tina, I can go back and pull things and show you. So I don't, I'm not pulling stuff out of my butt. I'm like literally, I'm seeing it somewhere and I'm grabbing it and I'm saying, this is my source. I cite my data. That's what I do. So when my child comes home and says, this is how many kids were in my class, and I look at this spreadsheet and I'm like, and how is no one saying anything? And so the parents are all saying it in comments on threads and things, but it's like they don't think to do anything about it. People don't think to do anything about it.
Right. I call that well, it's not my term, but I attribute that to bystander effect. We all think somebody else is going to do it. And, luckily the 4 of us recognize our responsibility. And I know that even if we are 1 in 100 and, but for every 100 people, there's somebody out there like us. So let's find each other.
Yes.
And let's do something about it because we are enough. It doesn't have to be everybody. Let's do this.
I think
How do we, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second because I have Alzheimer's and I'll forget. And then we're going to forget what I said and go to you and then come back to it. How do we hook up Mel and Rose to Emily and Amanda? Keep going, Mel.
Who's Emily and Amanda?
Gay will get to in a minute, but make your point.
Well, you say you have Alzheimer's. I've got dysautonomia. So, I mean, my brain is not fabulous. I'm going to say that what Gay was saying is how we ended up here is because literally I had the bystander effect. I sat back and was like, surely they've been making good decisions all last year. We were making good decisions last year. I feel very confident in our people because they're making great decisions. I mean, I thought hybrid was kind of ridiculous to start last year. And I feel like it should have started this year because we were at the end of the school year and all of a sudden it was very disruptive to everyone to switch over.
And just to even go back in person just for what? For tests?
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's literally what that was. And that was what
that was. But that was legislation. We got an extension, but everyone had to be at least in hybrid by March 29th. A date they pulled right out of their behinds.
Right. And the district even supported it because they knew that the state was going to do it anyway. And so then everybody was giving each other cover. Well, you know, we did it because we knew that, you know, no, fight it.
I think that's what's happening with this test and stay. Because honestly, it doesn't surprise me that Oldham County did it, but and Indiana doesn't either, because they're the last to do anything. It's like no mask mandate. We're still open. It's a free for all. And so Indiana doesn't shock me. And I came from Oldham County. I grew up there, so I'm very familiar with not necessarily the politics of it, but there's a culture, and it's every man for himself. And if you've got money, you're doing great. And if you happen to be the minority over there, which by the way, I'm not Black, but I was not rich. And that's what it's full of.
And they say, well, then, you know, that's your work ethic or whatever. And that's on you, as opposed to the barriers and burdens that society has created that they benefit from and then climb on the backs of other people to stay in those positions. So, yeah.
But our people are going to look at what other people are doing, and I'm very worried that they've already made up their minds. Like, they're going to go into this special session, they've already made up their mind of what they're going to do. And
so that's Rose's question. What do we do if we fail at this special session? Which Yvonne didn't even want a special session because she knows what these people are capable of, and why give them any more opportunities to screw us in any worse than they already have. But at the same time, we can't make any changes without taking this risk. So it's a calculated risk that the governor seems to think is worth taking. But again, his kids will be fine no matter how this turns out. So, you know, how hard is he going to fight? How hard is he willing to fight? What's he willing to risk? And to answer your question about what do we do if we fail, I think we do organize a sick out. We need to tell people to keep your kids home. It's not safe. And educate more white parents in particular about how we need to be conscientious objectors, even if we are fine. We need to be doing for others.
I don't like the idea of the sick out. I know it's going to make a very big impact, but my kids' education is number one. You know, I don't like the idea of the whole district shutting down for 2 weeks. While it will be eye-opening, the one who's going to our kids.
Would you, but you are open to NTI, or do you only want hybrid?
I want hybrid. I want hybrid all the way, because I feel like kids do need hands-on. I do. And like with a special program where he does with his hands, but he wouldn't be able to do that because he would not be there.
Well, if half the community sticks out and they keep the schools open, then you'll have your hybrid. You can still go.
But I feel like there would be 50% less contacts. Kids could spread out. It would be fantastic. And these little kids, they already know how to use NTI. I don't care what you say. My kid, which my daughter was in kindergarten last year, she showed my 7-year-old mother, how to work her computer. I was just like, these kids know what they're doing. Give them credit. So do your hybrid, spread these kids out, and don't treat them like you said, political pawns. Get them educated.
I mean, if they could take away that SEEK funding formula requirement, then they could justify keeping the schools open even if only half the kids are there. And those who have the ability could still keep their kids home, keep them safe. Those who are at greatest risk, our Black community wants to keep their kids home. A lot of them do because they know that it's dangerous, but they're not really given that option either because they risk truancy, they risk, you know, missing out on advancement opportunities into other schools, and you know, parents aren't willing to have to make those kinds of choices. We shouldn't put parents in those positions to make those kinds of choices.
I'm one of those parents. I'm not Black, but I'm also one of those parents. I live in a really great neighborhood, but the story behind how I got here is not normal. And it's when you look at kids that would miss out on opportunity, this is why, I had a parent that said this to me in a comment thread. She's like, why don't you just homeschool? Or why did you not enroll in the virtual? Okay, The reason I didn't enroll in virtual right away is one, I thought we'd have good quarantine policies in place. We had a lot of time to get this together. The quarantine education that goes on while you're during that 10 days, that should be running seamlessly by now. That should have been thought out, well executed, and ready to go. There's no excuse for it to be this mess.
That's right. That's
And
right.
and then, okay, so the other thing was my son is in an AP program. Okay. So he actually picked his school, he applied, and he got into the program, and he's in an all advanced class program. So if we chose virtual, we're told he's unenrolled from his school, loses his chair, and he's totally penalized. So he'll never get that back. That's basically what they're telling you. You're giving up this good spot. And I know they take their AP kids seriously, because every time I have a problem or a concern, I'm getting calls like right away within minutes. And I was told by my cousin, who is a JCPS educator, that if you get your kids in the AP program, that's your chance to get the best education you can out of JCPS. They care about those kids. They want them to stay in the program, and you will get attention. And it's true. I've been called by counselors. I've been called by the principal within 15 minutes of emailing him. And it was all about hybrid. I sent him the hybrid email, but I'm getting phone calls. I had a kid bullying my child. I said, I want this kid moved. That kid was moved immediately. And all the kids in all the classes that he's in, this child was in the same classroom, was all moved away. The teachers were all made aware of it. They take their AP kids seriously. They need to treat them all equally. AP kids are great and important, but my she's in the AP program now, but I had to petition for her to get into it. And the reason I fought for it is so she'd get that treatment. So this is not.
Every child deserves to be treated that way.
That's right. Exactly. Thank you. But if you want that treatment in JCPS, that's how you get it.
Right.
And that's not right either.
Well, and you have to be at a high performing school, because they have what we call sweeper schools, that the kids who misbehave or don't score well, or whoever, for whatever reason, they don't want them on their books, they push them off to our low performing schools because they can get lost.
You know what they do in Oldham County? You know what they do in Oldham County? So you don't fudge their numbers. Okay, so you don't mess with their numbers, because I'm one of those underperforming children. At the time that I was in school, it wasn't a great home life. And so my little story was not, I was kids, they just wanted to go away. They have little classes set up for people who are low performing. And I don't think they include those people in their numbers. My curriculum was not the standard curriculum. I never learned trigonometry. I never learned algebra 2. You don't get any of those calculus. Couldn't tell you anything about it. Physics, couldn't tell you anything about it. I wasn't educated in any of that. And I was in a blue ribbon school. What I was given was low little classes that are just a little enough to get you to pass the legal standard, to get you out the door. They want you to have that diploma so you count as a winner.
That's performance-based right there. I think you just described performance-based, like just enough to say, yes, they pass. And I bet you're right. They have exemptions for certain categories of students that don't count against their numbers, and they can shuffle you off.
As long as you graduated, right. You're
right.
okay.
Yep. So they know.
I know.
They know all these tricks. We know we can't trust them. Even if our superintendent is the greatest thing since sliced bread, we've got assistant superintendents and principals that vary from area to area and school to school. And so the inconsistencies there alone are enough to say, that we can't just, now I'm kind of making an argument against local control, but we know that people are going to fudge numbers, and we know that things need to be better managed. But once we can get that local control and start holding people accountable and getting access to data and records, like they keep their own books, they cook their books and they keep their own books. So what we need to do is start pushing for outside review, just like the civilian review that we've pushed for our police. We need a civilian review board for our school system. And so that's actually Another organization that Yvonne and I have been doing some work on is the Coalition for the People's Agenda, and I serve on the board for the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And so our coalition is actually pushing for those types of things. So there are next steps, but there's so many steps down the road because we still got to get these things moved out of the way. But it can be done. It's certainly, the other option is to just throw our hands up and walk away. And none of us here sound like we're willing to do that.
So are you guys Kentucky Sick Out and Dear JCPS? You're both of them?
I'm running the
I'm
Kentucky.
JCPS leads and Dear JCPS.
JCPS.
Kentucky Sick Out was from the first Sick Out, but Liz Palmer, who runs that, has had a lot of issues. Her husband got hit by a car and almost died. I mean, just a lot of bad things have happened to poor Liz.
So I think you're talking about Defend Public Education, and she's talking about the KY Sick Out page that I run.
Oh, I thought she was yeah, okay, you're right. I was totally confused.
So Mel, my name is Gay Adelman, but right now on Facebook, I'm Nikki Bidness.
You're on that page then. You're already on there. You're the one posting things. Okay.
And I'm sorry to be operating in stealth mode, but if you look at my profile, it's real clear who I am. If anybody's really curious, I'm not hiding it. Facebook has banned me now for the 5th time. This time I'm on a 30-day ban. And
For nothing.
my offense was quoting Joe Biden word for word. My latest offense. The time before that, I told a friend of mine I thought I was going to have to kick his ass and laughed about it because he said something that at first he wrote satire, and it started out with the thing that was one of my biggest pet peeves, and he knows it's one of my biggest pet peeves. And so and it was in Dear JCPS, the group that he knows I run and moderate. And so when he said these things, I was like, Tim, am I going to have to come kick your ass? Like, that's what was going through my head. And then I read it, and he was like, if you mean so and so and so and so. And so like, and then it really went the right way. And so I just made a joke at the end. I thought I was going to have to kick your ass, and I got a 7-day ban for that one for inciting violence. Even though it had smiley faces, and my friend knew I was.
So, so like you were kind of like interviewing me over in Messenger. And you were like seeing things on my, was it on Live and Learn that you saw concerning things, or was it on my personal page? What?
And I stalked your page, and there was only one thing on there that was concerning, and that is there was a petition to put SROs back in schools. And I'm fine with SROs in schools as a white parent with a white kid who doesn't get targeted by police brutality and disproportionate pipeline to prison statistics. But my Black family friends and teachers have told me that police in schools make them feel less safe. And so what we really need to be doing is finding a solution to keep all of our kids safe that all of our families can agree with, and SROs is not that.
I was hoping that really what I really want is I want metal detectors at our front doors. I know that sounds really horrible, but like my son, it literally since kindergarten, he's my oldest, he's my first one, out the door and figure out how it works. And from the time I dropped him off at kindergarten, even over here in East End school, I'm scared. Ever since Sandy Hook, I've been very, very scared to send children to school. And I was terrified when that happened. And I'm so upset that no one wants to talk about it and they don't want to look at it. And my family is majority Republican. I'm the black sheep in my family. I don't claim to be of either party, but I would say I look at things and I'm like, I refuse to get in a box. Okay. I'm not going to get in a box. I'm going to look at every situation and every little thing, but I'm scared to send my kids to school. And literally already I got a letter home from Thomas Jefferson, and it was that a child had brought a bullet to school. He brought it out in class and they were looking at it and talking about it. I guess someone got scared and they reported it. And then when they went through that child's belongings, someone found a knife. So, and the child said that he didn't plan on hurting anyone. He had no plans. I think maybe he just had those. When I was in school, when I was in Oldham County school, kids had guns and knives, okay? But I wasn't scared of them, all right? Nobody was actually going to shoot someone. That was not, I don't really know why they were carrying guns and knives except to maybe be cool, Because you know how kids would pull out that butterfly knife. I don't know if you ever remember kids doing that, but they would pull out a butterfly knife and flip it all around and show off that they could do that. But I'm scared. I'm scared to send my kids to school.
And you should, I mean, the gun nuts that are out there and the lax laws that exist that allow just anyone to
Gun.
obtain an automatic gun that could, cause a major amount of damage in a short amount of time. That is real. That is a real threat, and you should be afraid. The thing is, what we find is we have a lot of white teachers in our schools who still have implicit bias, unaddressed implicit bias, and see behaviors differently based on the color of a child's skin, and have initially started out with arguments like we need police in our schools to keep them safe from outside threats. That's where the conversation usually starts, but then it goes toward, well, what if they misbehave, and what if they have this, and what if, but see, there's no way to keep them separate, and so we have,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so there are some techniques that schools have been looking at and using, which includes swiping everyone in. Everyone should be swiping in. That's where we should be putting our money, is identification, and everybody who's in that building belongs there kind of thing. The metal detectors, I attended a town hall a few years ago, it's been now, about metal detectors and whether or not they actually work, and they create a false sense of security. If somebody really is intent on bringing a gun into a school and causing harm, they'll just bring it in around the metal detector. They'll go in a window or a side door or some other, there are, especially like my son went to Shawnee, we had 27 entrances at that building and most of our windows didn't lock. So, in the schools where—
That's not a thing. I mean, how do you, that, you know what, that killed me during the summer. Gay, because Rose and I walked by our school and it was getting new windows and there was nothing there. I was like, anybody could just go in and take whatever they want. Computers, whatever, food, which, honestly, if people, I've always kind of been like looking the other way if people steal food, to be honest. I'm sorry. If you need food, there's a reason you're taking food. But you know what I'm saying? They could go in and take anything. But no, really, and here's where I think differently. And I didn't like this either. I've seen teachers take a child that they identify and label as a problem child and turn them around and isolate them from the class and make them face the wall. And that really bothers me. I don't like that.
Yep, that's abusive.
And I know that I know when I think, and you know what, I would go to parties and I would have that child that was excluded and I would go over and slip them the goodie bag, because I hate that. You show someone some kindness. I'll tell you what, I was on a field trip and there was, I had 2 or 3 kids that I ended up with like 11 kids in my group. I was not supposed to have that many, but there was a substitute and he lost control of the group. And so I ended up with like 11 kids and I was one parent. Okay. And I had 3 children that were problem children. And I tell you what, I was watching them and I kept thinking, what is going on in your life that is leading you to act out this way? Right. Because at the heart of children, when you think about how children work and think, they're not malicious, they're reactive. So whatever is happening at home or inconsistencies in your life, that is contributing to your behavior. So we need to find the foundation cause of that. And I can't control that, but what can I do in this moment to make it a little better for you? So I saw these kids acting out and I said to them, everybody sit down. Let's just take a break. All right. Because I was losing control of the group. And I looked and I'm spying this one kid that's giving me grief. And I said to him, would you like a hug? I asked him if that's what he wanted, because it just struck me as that might be what he needed. But it was up to him to decide that. And he did. And the rest of the time we were on that field trip, he was excellent. He wanted to help me. So just a little act of compassion or kindness goes a really long way with kids. And that's part of why we love Miss Rivera so much, is because her passion is like, you can't fake that. That is real love for kids. You can't fake that.
These kids,
there's no way.
You think I came from an alternative school where my girls had a really, most of them had a terrible life. So when I came to Wilder, I was stunned to see how many kids live with their grandparents.
Yep.
You know, and you know, their grandparents have money, so it looks like everything's okay. But you know, if your grandparents had to adopt you, something really bad happened. If your grandparents are raising you, that means you don't have your mom, you don't have your dad, you've got nothing. That doesn't just, I mean, unless they were killed in a terrible car wreck, and I guess that happens occasionally, but something like a fourth of our kids live with their grandparents.
And Yvonne, do you know the root cause in many of those cases?
I suspect it's drugs and alcohol, you know, just despair.
So I agree with you. I've heard that as well. And again, I want to draw some parallels because our Black communities have been suffering from drug abuse and the ramifications, you know, the broken homes, prison sentences for minor possession of marijuana, which has been proven to help with PTSD. You know, so they're having to face jail time for coping with trauma, and then there's the whole Reagan administration intentionally addicting many of our Black men to crack cocaine back in the 70s. You probably know this history better than I do. So, you know, we're still punishing a community for problems that we created and caused and perpetuated. And now it is spilling up into our affluent white households. And we suddenly act like this is an epidemic that must be addressed because now it's a prescription OxyContin addiction that they got legally because, you know, they have the connections and the doctors who will prescribe it and the money to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, these problems are not unique and they're not new, but suddenly we care because they're impacting people we know. But what white people tend to do historically is when we become aware of these epidemics and these problems, we solve them for ourselves and ourselves only. And as soon as we're satisfied that things are, you know, clicking along again, we drop the ball and we leave people behind. And so that's what I'm hoping is different this time, especially if we make sure we keep having that part of the conversation in the work that we do. So I talk a lot and I know that, but there's a lot to cover. And, you know, it sounds like you guys are on the same page, and anything that we don't agree on right off the bat, we can talk through and figure out. Ultimately, I like to work in consensus. I like for us to all agree and, you know, move forward so that nobody feels like they were voted against. But when push comes to shove, if we've got 99% of us ready to go and there's one person that says, I don't like that, and, you know, well, then maybe this group isn't for you, and that's okay too. You know, we can't let one person throw a wrench into everything because they're not getting their way and sabotage the movement work that I personally have been part of for a decade now. And, you know, I'm new, I'm a babe in the woods. So I appreciate you guys coming on this call and taking the time to hear me out and have an opportunity to hear you out. And, you know, I think we've got our work cut out for us, but I think we're up for it. And I hope you agree.
How did you come to start your journey?
It's a good story. It's great.
The things you said, like there are some, this is common sense. Why is nobody doing common sense? That was me. That was me and my friend Aaron Corbelow. My son, the timing of us moving to Louisville, Kentucky also probably contributed a great deal to where I landed, and forced me into a situation that made me humbled me. because my son had always been a top performer, AP student, high achiever, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, we've moved around a lot. And every time we did, we bought a house in a fancy neighborhood so we could send him to the best school and get the best teachers and the best resources, because that's how the game is played, right? Well, we moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and they don't play the game by the same rules that I was used to. So my son was advanced at least 2 years ahead of his classmates in the coursework that we were looking at for Kentucky. One, because he was always just 1 year ahead of his peers, and two, because Kentucky's about a year behind. So that put him 2 years ahead of his peers. And oh my God, this was our second time to move to Kentucky, by the way. The first time we lived in Southeast Kentucky, and he was more like 8 years ahead of his peers. So I wouldn't even put him in public school, because the things that they were showing him that he was going to do in 8th grade, he pulled me aside and he said, "I did that in 3rd grade, Mom." And I said, "Okay, then we're not going to do that to you again. Let's find a private school." And I actually taught in a private school in Southeast Kentucky for 2 years so that my son could attend private school, because I was that mom. I'm that soccer mom. I'm that privileged mom that only the best for my kid, you know, because achievement is so important. And he couldn't get into manual. It was too late. He couldn't get into Brown. It was too late. He couldn't get into male. It was too late, because we moved in the summer. He was starting his freshman year in high school. So having STEM being his main area of interest, I looked at the choice catalog, because that's what you can do in Jefferson County is choose, right? It's a choice district. So only 3 high schools offered STEM at the time. I think it's still the same when it comes to engineering. The engineering piece of it is still just 3 high schools. So Eastern was the one in my neighborhood. It was currently under construction. It was way too big. I just felt like he was going to get lost. So we looked at Southern, and we looked at Shawnee. And the first time we drove out to Shawnee, both my boys, my oldest was finishing high school in New Jersey. So he was moving with us, but he was not going to be attending school in Jefferson County. But we were driving through the neighborhood where Shawnee is. And I went around actually to the Market Street side, and then through the parking lot where all the potholes were. And I remember all of us just going, "Next." We just kept driving, you know, like, okay, rule that one out. But then I went back and read the catalog some more, and they didn't even have a website. And so I called, and I'm like, "I need to know more about your school and your program and your offerings and this and that." And they were like, "Well, come in for a tour." And I'm like, "Okay." So we brought him back and did a tour, and he met teachers that were phenomenal. He met the principal, who was a turnaround principal. I could see the potential. The school is phenomenal. I'm so grateful for the renovation, because that 3rd floor not being utilized was a crime in and of itself.
40 years.
I'm sorry. I'm going to pause you right there. Our kids being in a school with that had a condemned floor, how is that even legal? I was horrified to hear that. I don't know how you could have children in a condemned building. I just don't understand. But
Just shut it off. The 3rd floor was shut off.
no. What if it collapsed with kids in it? No. But go ahead.
So my friend Erin and I had both sent our kids to Shawnee because they had an aviation magnet. And among other things, my son liked to fly. And I'm like, "Hey, let's go to Shawnee. Let's check it out. You can get your pilot's license." He's like, "Okay." And, you know, with his first day wasn't so great, but his second day and every day after that, he was valedictorian. He was president of this and chair of that. He flew missions on space shuttles. They had so many opportunities. They only had 1 AP class when he started there. They had 8 by the time he left, because I demanded it. I pushed for him. I'm like, "What now? Now that he took your 1 AP class, what's he going to do next year? What's he going to do next year?" And so they created programs for him that once they created them, other students could participate. And it just takes a few of us to create those opportunities for everybody. We didn't even have a PTA. That's actually how I first got involved, is I'm like, why are our students not getting these PTA scholarships if they're needs-based? We've got more need than anybody else in the district. And they said, "Oh, well, you don't have an active PTA." I'm like, "You're really punishing our children because there's no active PTA? They can't even apply?" I say, "Okay, let's fix that. How hard can it be to start a PTA?" So I started a PTA, which they still have. And it was harder than I thought it was going to be, because there are people out there who don't want you to succeed. There are people out there who want you to fail, especially if you are advocating for Black people.
So basically, all the equality that Black people have gotten is because white people had to speak up and fight for it.
I think so.
It really looks like it. It looks like you went into a predominantly Black community and you said, "What the heck?" And they were like, "Oh, there's a white woman here. We better actually do something."
Right there. Yes. They listen to us. We get a different response. In fact,
well, I mean, Aiden's a Thomas Jefferson, and Nate and it's the same thing that you're saying. It's literally the same thing you're saying. I was really scared for the school. I let my son choose his school by his interest. So we looked at what schools had the curriculum that interested him, and I was scared. I'm scared. But we drove down there, and I'm like, I think this is a borderline area. I mean, I feel like they might be okay. And I know the Black community wants the schools in their area because they want their children to have the opportunity. Because we went down at the Montessori school, the Coleridge Taylor, and we toured it, and I loved it. But I was still scared. Actually, I was scared that my ding dong brain would drive down there to get him and get lost. But and really, that's what sealed it for us. Was we toured Wilder, and we were like, it's not bad. I thought it was going to be bad, but it was great. And so, since it's so close to our home, we went with it. But really, and it's because we thought I'd get lost if I had to go down there. I'm still scared for the first time that I get called down to Thomas Jefferson because I'm worried I'll get lost. But it's better with the mapping thing telling you where to turn. But at the same time, I go down there and I'm looking at the people coming in and out, and I'm like, it's not. Part of the attraction of JCPS is that there's so many cultures and races, and we want our children raised among that. Remember, I come from Oldham County, so it's a predominantly white area, but I'm not the rich girl. So my friends were those people that were not the predominant group because they accept me. Okay, so I learned growing up by my experience among other white people that I wanted to have that diversity in my life. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
And I want my kids to have that. So when my children started school, they're all like, they're getting their first experience with Black people. And I get to say, they're people just like me and you. We have the same rights. You treat them with kindness. And I'm thrilled that when my son comes, he's making his first friends ever, because all through elementary school, he didn't make any. But he goes to the school that he picked. And although already he's come home every single day and said he's had a good day. I'm like, how was today? And I'm scared. And then he's like, it was a great day. Today I made more friends, or I made this new friend. And then when he finally logs on to play Minecraft or whatever, and they get on and I can see their little faces and I see 3 different races. I'm like, yes.
Yes, right. Right.
I'm like, that's what I want in my kid's life. I want all of it. Bring it all. I want all of the diversity.
Well, and I want to make sure that I don't misspeak, especially if, this video makes it out there. I'm not saying that Black people haven't led the way and fought for these rights. The thing is they hit walls, they get lied to, they get labeled angry. They have to cope. They have to function. They have trauma. Racial trauma is real. And so we don't experience racial trauma to the same extent that Black people do. I'm going to say that I've been traumatized from all of the things the reactions that I've gotten from people. So I can't even imagine what it must be like to have Black skin and not be able to say, screw it, because I can quit tomorrow. I have quit this fight 10 times a day, every day since I started. I can, that's my privilege. And so, they can't, so they have to cope and function differently. But they know what needs to be done. And I think a lot of them now know that this moment is different. What we're living right now is different, and it's a make or break time for us as a society, really. And our planet. I mean, let's get real. There's a lot at stake right now. And then, of course, the day-to-day lives of our children and our families are at stake. And that's, they've pushed us to the point. The lawmakers and the radical right-wing white supremacists who don't want change have pushed us to a make or break point that I hope they're going to live to regret, because I think that we are small, but we are mighty, and we are on the right side of history. And Martin Luther King said the arc of justice bends. How does that quote go? I just screwed it up.
The arc of history bends towards justice. It took me a minute.
I don't know if it's history, but the arc of, okay, whatever.
I asked Rose, I was like, how many of us do you think there were out there? And she's like, I think there's more than you think.
I think so too. People are
on purpose. The arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. So morality. And I hope that we can prove his theory right.
So what do we do now?
So gather as many white parents and kids as you can to come to Frankfurt on Tuesday. And let's make a lesson out of this so nobody gets counted absent. So those families that are worried about their child's track, and that'll buy us 5 days. I think you can have up to 5 days. And then hopefully by then they'll have seen the seriousness of the situation, and they'll have passed some good legislation that will allow our local leaders to do more things and be more creative. But we have to keep the pressure on them too. Some of the things we talked about on the call today, we need to go back to our board members. We need to go back to our superintendent. We need to go back to KDE and keep the pressure on each of those aspects. We're also still fighting the anti-CRT people, which is the same people. And that there's 2 bills that have been pre-filed for January. So, let's keep gathering these people that care about the same issues and help them see how it's all related, so that come January, we've still got that momentum. Between now and January, let's start planning protests in the districts of the lawmakers that are the worst offenders. Let's come up with some kind of spreadsheet that shows how they voted, what bills, harmful bills they've co-sponsored. Like, they should get 10 points off if they co-sponsored a harmful bill because they're not smart enough to recognize that that was a harmful bill. 1 point for every bad vote on those harmful bills. Unfortunately, that means Tina's going to get some bad points. She's not going to be one of our allies in this fight.
Like all the things you've said, I've seen happening over in that other group. They're doing the same thing. They keep bringing up the November elections. They're looking at that already too.
So that's even
like, remember so-and-so's name.
That's another reason why our people need to know that we've got their backs, because we can turn out the voters. We've done it before. They have to cheat on their petitions to get tax increases turned over. They have to bring in people from outside of Jefferson County to run these groups and file these lawsuits and do these things because they don't have real people. And we just keep exposing that, and I'm referring to the Tea Party that did the yes, vote no campaign, which, by the way, we had a vote yes campaign that got sabotaged by district leaders and union leaders. So our allies are also not our friends. We got to take matters into our own hands.
Okay.
And there are way fewer of them than there are of us. They're just loud, and they're, people like us are like cats. We are hard to herd. They're all on one page. Masks are bad. Public schools are bad. Vaccines are bad. They're trying to put microchips in you because this doesn't track you already, right? So you need a microchip. I mean,
full disclosure, I do want you both to know that I am not vaccinated. I talked to Yvonne earlier. The reason I am not vaccinated is I have a medical condition that is an actual side effect of the vaccine and of COVID. So I'm not careless. I wear a mask and I take all my precautions and social distance. And really, when everybody was going full force and vaccine and masks off and free for all, we were still staying the course. My family has been continuously wearing a mask nonstop because we're not flippant. We know this is a real issue. I personally am in a place of fear where
You-
I'm scared of what'll happen.
You and people like you are the reason why the rest of us should be vaccinated and wearing our masks, because not everybody can. And it's not
Immunocompromised, all kind, you know, you all know I had cancer. If that had happened during the pandemic, I could not get a vaccination. It would have killed me. I didn't have an immune system. Chemotherapy takes out your immune system like totally, and then you have to rebuild it over a couple of years.
Well, what I'm reading is saying that like what I'm reading is saying like the doctors, like for my medical condition, it's dysautonomia. I have POTS, which is if you look into the side effects of either people who are injured by the vaccine or people who are getting COVID, both of them are getting what I have. And so I'm scared that if I take it, it'll make it worse. Or if, and then I'm scared if I get COVID, it's going to make it worse. I can't win really. But I'm asked, like the doctors are like, get it, you should get it. They're just telling everybody. And to me, I'm like, some people, it seemed like what Yvonne just said. I mean, some people with medical conditions that even a doctor would still tell you to go get the vaccine. I'm still kind of like, I don't understand. If the side effects are that your condition might be worse, shouldn't you be a little scared? I mean, err to the side of caution or something. And I don't know. It's a really hard place to be. I've never been in a position where I've been hesitant before to go get my vaccines. Like I've had my MMR, my polio, and I get my tetanus and keep them up. And this is the first time I've been like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do. And I'm sure that there's other people out there that are not anti-vax, but that are just afraid of,
I'm guilty. I'm a super vaxxer. I believe in vax, but for some reason this one it seems like there's some side effects. I just want to wait and see what it does to everybody else. My husband's vaccinated, but I don't want to sound like I don't believe in science. I don't want to be that guy, but I do want to be the one who observes and says, oh, no, I'm just gonna watch just for a second. But I definitely am not that guy. So I made that choice. But once again, we seem like a kind of group where it is nobody puts anything in their body that they don't want. You can do whatever you want with your body. And that is my personal belief.
Well, and I think your medical positions and histories are your personal private business, and you've shared that with us, and thank you for that, for trusting us with that information. But you don't have to. I don't need to see your vaccine card to know that I should still protect you and fight to keep.
I agree with Mel. We do need full disclosure. I mean, it's the way it is right now.
I think that's a personal decision. The herd immunity requires a certain percentage of people to get vaccinated, but not everyone. So let's focus on the people that can and should be getting their vaccine. But even then, we didn't do it in a timely enough fashion that prevented it from mutating. So, now it's even worse. Now, I don't really even know what to expect going forward with additional mutations and variants. And I think that, again, we were talking about climate change and our democracy. I think there's going to be some other thinning of the herd that, yeah, I mean, I'm not even speculating. It's already happened. What am I talking about? So, maybe our planet's overpopulated and Mother Nature's way, and it's just, we can't fight it because we're just another species that thinks we're more special and important than we really are.
I just want to be completely honest up front. I don't want any surprises to be like, what? I just wanted to be very, very forthcoming. But,
no, the only surprise would be if you got up in front of the microphone Tuesday morning and said, nobody should be vaccinated. I'd be like, oh, that's not what I thought we were doing. But, but what you do personally, like what people do personally isn't movement work. Like what you do, how you practice your personal life is not my concern. It's none of my business. But if we're doing the work, collectively doing the work, that's all I really care about. And I think that's what you'll find most of us in this group, how we operate.
Okay.
So, So keep harvesting. I like that word, even though they'll probably use it against us. Keep harvesting people that share your views. Keep bringing them to your group. If I could make a suggestion, I have a hard time finding your group because there are other live and learns out there. It's kind of a generic-y enough name that if we could call it Kentucky, I don't think you should focus just on Louisville. I think you should focus on the whole state.
Does anybody know how to change the title? Because I thought that too, Gay. I noticed the same thing, but I don't know how to change it.
I think if you go to like the about page, you should be able to see like settings or edit or something.
Okay. Because I thought the same thing you did right away, and then I was trying to change it, and I was like, I thought maybe it was too late, and I didn't know how to do it.
No, you can change it. In fact, the Kentucky Stick Out page used to be anyone but Jones. I ran the group, the page that led the fight to get rid of David Jones from our school board.
Okay, so I'll just keep
used anymore. So I was like, hey, I'll rename it.
I'll keep messing with it and see if I can't figure out how to do it. And I wanted to add, but I thought exactly what you did. I was like, maybe I need to pinpoint specifically JCPS. But you're right. I think I like Kentucky better because I'm not. It's like Tina was pointing out. I did notice that she was pointing out she was trying. She was. We wanted localized to decision making, but she was worried if she backed that those rural areas would be forgotten and that they might make poor decisions and children might suffer for that. So I could see her thinking there, but and that kind of goes with if I added Kentucky to the title, that would be all inclusive.
And I think we need to keep fighting for those rural districts, but we first have to be able to identify who they are.
Gotta get your own house in order first.
Yeah, but by not always enabling and rescuing others, sometimes people have to feel it a little bit and recognize that they're going to need our support. And, you know, that's part of it. And also just for us to be able to identify who's being harmed now. You know, if we've got mask mandates all around and we're making sure that everybody is safe, then we don't know where the bad guys are hiding. So we have to kind of remove some of those sutures in order to see where the bleeding is still happening, I guess.
So this is really like a sort of game to them, and you've had to adapt and learn how to move the chess pieces.
And the thing is, I think we have a lot more moves left than they do. That's why they're playing the game the way they are, is they're desperate and they're running out of moves and they back themselves into a little checkmate. And it's just up to us to stop dancing around with them and just go in for the kill.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to try to figure out how to change that title and hopefully make it easier to find. And then
you go ahead.
I'm a bit of an introvert, actually. So I don't actually have a lot of people in my bucket. So when you were like, what have you got? And I've got not very much. And all these people we've harvested have been me going in and reading articles and commenting. I mean, like, if you're this upset, come over here.
Yeah, and keep doing that. That's great.
Okay, because that's kind of why I was talking to Mrs. Rivera, and she was like, Yvonne, I'm so sorry, dear.
She can't do it. You can't say it.
She's like, she actually was telling me I needed to talk to you. And I'm like, and I'm going over there and you're like, who are you, lady?
And I'm pretty direct and to the point. You can ask me anything, tell me anything. I might offend you just because I don't have a lot of those. One, I'm in a hurry. I'm always in a hurry. So I don't take the time. I apologize in advance. I don't take the time to ask how things are going or how your family's doing or whatever. We'll do that later. Let's win this battle. And then we'll have a big party at the end and get to know each other a little bit better. So if I hurt anyone's feelings or say something that, feels like I was too direct or too blunt, I apologize. That's just my nature, and people who work with me kind of know to put up with me despite that, because my heart's in the right place. I care about the kids. I care about justice, and I care about racial justice in particular, just because of what I've personally witnessed, and I've discovered. I'm not even going to say I feel or believe, because facts are facts, and I've discovered that when it comes to public education, and in particular Jefferson County, where our minority population make up the majority of our students, but yet they're still the ones that are the least served and the least represented and the least in charge of their own fate in our city too, not just in our district, but in our city. That's structural racism being played out. And I do think that white people have a responsibility. I don't know that it's only going to be us, because we need to be taking advice and messages and experiences of our Black community members and put them first. But we are in those seats. I see my role as really just someone who, the elevator is closing, the door is closing, and I'm closer to it than anyone else. So I'm going to stick my hand or my foot or whatever into that opening and hold it open. And then I'm going to say, come on, come on, come on, let's go, you know? And so that's kind of how the mindset, I guess, that I feel like I operate with, because my goal is not to be in charge or make the decisions or whatever. But I see the people that are in charge of making decisions doing a very bad job. And I want to be able to say they need to be replaced, and I'm in a better position to maybe nudge them out or call attention to the harmful things that they're doing, because people also listen to me because of the color of my skin when they maybe won't listen to a person of color. And so I'm using my privilege to be that ally, to be that accomplice, and hold that door open, hold those seats open, create new tables where they're welcome and their voices are welcome, and then we amplify those voices. And so that's kind of what Dear JCPS has evolved into. We didn't start out that way. I didn't see racial justice as even relevant when I first started. I don't see color, you know that expression? I didn't see color. I feel I treat everyone the same, so I just assume everybody treats everyone the same, and racism is dead. Like, these are all things that I thought, and until I saw it with my own eyes, and I saw example after example after example, and I saw lies being made up. I saw teachers being targeted for simply standing up for our kids. Like, the amount of bullying that was taking place in Shawnee, simply for teachers, white and Black, for simply saying, hey, maybe we could do this. But like, they weren't even rocking the boat. They were just saying, you know, maybe if we extended our schedule so that kids could stay after school, we could solve some transportation issues, da, 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 da. Next thing you know, they were demoted, you know, because they were, you know, rocking the boat in somebody's mind, and they don't want to draw attention to the school's problems. So if you point out the fact that you needed a after school program or whatever, then that draws attention. So like, it's a nasty, vicious cycle. And, you know, so we have a lot of other things that also need to be addressed. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, we need to restore site-based decision-making power to those low-performing schools. You know, instead of saying that the site-based decision-making council is the problem, how could it possibly be the problem when Shawnee hasn't had one for 10 years? Maybe you should empower the parents, not just with the PTA, but with their site-based decision-making council, so they have some say, because parents don't show up time and time again if every time they tell you what needs to be done, you ignore them, sweep it under the rug, discredit them, can't wait till they graduate, you know, push them out to another school, whatever. They've learned that that's, you know, a waste of their time. So, you know, when I was telling you about the turnaround principle that we had, and my friend Erin and I, what caused us to finally start Dear JCPS was that we saw that this was a pattern, and it wasn't ending, it wasn't going away. And the principal that we had that we thought was phenomenal and capable of turning the school around was forced to quit. They forced him out. They held a meeting to talk about a new direction, new plan for the school, when we didn't even have a principal. And the assistant superintendent at the time, Lynn Wheat, came down to the school, held meetings, interest meetings, and collected feedback from the community. And we all came with our list of questions, but they managed us so thoroughly, like they micromanaged the meeting space so that voices and concerns were not allowed to be shared. We had to share them within our table, and then one question per table got to be raised. And Aaron and I, that's how we kind of met, was we both showed up with 3 pages of questions that, as the PTA president, I had been given by teachers that were too scared to speak out anywhere else, and they didn't know where to turn because we didn't have a principal, and I was the closest thing they had to leadership in that building at the time. So that's how I got anointed. I know, that's how I got put in that position. And then once I had the data, I kind of had a responsibility to make sure that it didn't get lost in the mix, right? And so Aaron and I started Dear JCPS, and it probably wasn't until, gosh, I can still remember myself saying things like, I don't see color, and let's not talk about race all so much. I told one of my co-founders of Save Our Schools that he talked about race too much in our group. I told Michael McLeod that. I was like, can we save that for but ultimately it all came down, the fundamental, everything kept coming back to some kind of implicit bias or structural racism or a barrier that they didn't want to remove. And I eventually realized that it's all about race. It's all about bigotry. Okay. It's all about bias and bigotry and that scarcity mentality. And it's easier to separate people by something that we can visually see right away. And it's not even unique to the United States. You look at apartheid, and you look at the Yvonne, help me with the tutus and the shape.
Yeah, Hutus and Tutsis.
That right there. Like if there's some characteristic that we can distinguish quickly in our culture to say you deserve more and you don't, and I want to be, I'm with them, so that I don't get left out. That's how bias and discrimination really kind of becomes cemented. And so we can say we don't see color, but yet Jim Crow is still alive and well. And we've got lawmakers passing laws to this day that don't use the word race in their laws, but when they say, they set criteria that if 3 or more people are hanging out together,
and they get arrested for anything, it's a gang.
Then that's gang.
Yeah, the gang bill said if 3 young people are arrested for something, they are a gang and you can punish them more. Well, where they're going to arrest 3 or more people doing something wrong and declare them a gang. And it ain't going to be in Harlan County, where Chucky, Bubba, and the other one.
So, learning to recognize
the deeper you dug, that's what you got down to the bottom, the heart of it all was.
What's that?
The deeper you dug into this, so you're finding yourself and you're like just addressing each issue, and then you're finding this unwinding before you, and you're like, really, that's what's at the core of this?
Yeah. And it's the patterns. And, LMPD is being investigated for patterns and practices right now of discrimination. And that's essentially what's happening in Jefferson County too. And so, that's one of my things that I'm pushing is let's also investigate our school district for patterns and practices of discrimination. And I've documented so many of them. Like at this point, I don't need to keep collecting receipts. I need to start cashing in receipts. And so, but they do such a good job of derailing us when we're being successful, discrediting us. This Facebook ban that I'm on, I don't think I do think Mark Zuckerberg is a racist, but I don't think that he knows who Gay Adelman is and that he's targeted me specifically. I do think that there's algorithms that have targeted me specifically, but I also think that there are local trolls who are part of Teresa Camariano's group who have made a fake profile to be my friend. And whenever I say sex, drugs, or rock and roll, they flag it. And every once in a while they get lucky, and I get a ban. So, I do think that they've got enough spare time and money and hate.
They got money. The Koch brothers have, this was when we listened to, what was her name? Rebecca Gorelli talking. The Koch brothers at that time, they were both alive, worth $40 billion. They're worth a lot more now. But at the time they were worth $40 billion. So I did a little calculation and realized that at the time, a person making the $5 million for them was the equivalent of 30 cents for somebody making $30,000. So for them
Yes.
to start 63 think tanks
Yeah.
is pocket change. You're semi-muted, Gay. Can you turn yourself up? Or maybe I accidentally turned you down. Did I do that?
I don't know if I'm talking. Can you hear me?
Oh,
okay?
okay, I can hear you okay. I'm just deranged. But
I
they,
was agreeing with you. I
yes,
look like
they, but that's how they can make it look like they have a lot of people when they don't.
right. And it's an investment because it's going to pay for itself in spades, when they get that law changed so that they can just start making it legal to now take money out of our school systems and divert. They like that SEEK formula. They like that per pupil allocation because it's easy math. If they can get a virtual school started, even though there's no brick and mortar overhead and it's scalable to 1,000 kids per teacher or whatever, because there's no professional guidelines that say you can't have class size limitations when you're a charter school. And so they do these virtual charter schools. This is a gold mine opportunity for them right now. They can't believe that they haven't cashed in on Kentucky yet. Like, they did not think it was going to be this hard. They really didn't. And so in fact, there was a national article when we stopped charter schools, wasn't there, Yvonne, that said
I will find it right now. I'm so proud of us.
This has never been done before. We just didn't see this coming at all. Well, guess what? It's not over yet either. They thought we were going to pack up and go take our toys and go home too. And I'm close, but I feel like we've got a finish line ahead of us that it is do or die, because there's gerrymandering that they can still do. There's voter suppression. There's all this other stuff they still have in their back pocket that if we don't stop them now, like between special session and this coming January, if we don't stop them, it's all she wrote. It really is. And we can show up in November, and maybe by then people will feel enough pain that they'll show up and help us flip some seats, because I think that's part of it too, is people need to feel that pain. White people need to recognize that that they've made some really poor choices in their support of certain candidates, and be willing to listen to Charles Booker and Attica Scott and those who have been telling them what's really happening is all part of the plan, and we're really all suffering from the same lack of supports, lack of, they like to call it socialism, I guess, but caring for our most vulnerable, making sure there are safety nets in place. That didn't used to be a Democratic only ideal, but they've turned it into one because that's how they keep us divided and weaponize. Really, they've weaponized
People.
Yes, absolutely. And Kentucky's not unique to this. The coal miners and the strip miners, and we should know better that we're prey. We've got Mitch McConnell, who's been preying on us for longer than Charles Booker's been alive, 30-something years, I guess. He's not our friend. He's not our ally. He's not looking out for us. And this is not unique to Kentucky. And so that's part of it too, is when Yvonne and I first met, we were exploring charter school laws in other states and really the 40-year history of the privatization agenda and how it actually started in South America through the World Bank. Again, a separation of classes, a way to only provide education and social safety nets and benefits to the wealthier class. Am I wrong on any of that, Yvonne? South America. And I think we have a unique opportunity, one, because they did underestimate us and they still continue to underestimate us, but two, Jefferson County is Breonna Taylor's school district. we are on the map when it comes to racial justice and the fight for racial justice. And I think we are number one on the map when it comes to racial justice for Black women. Say Her Name. This is our town. The Say Her Name movement is Jefferson County and Breonna Taylor and now Tanisha Chappelle, you know, the Louisville resident who was killed in a Kentucky prison recently. I don't know if you guys are following that story.
Did you get down there to those protests? They were
What's that?
fantastic. I was like,
Yeah.
did you get down there to the protests? Wasn't that beautiful?
Energizing, so inspiring, and so community driven, you know. And Yvonne, you said the thing about herding cats. We are harder to herd. We are a bunch of cats, and we are harder to herd. But cats also know some things. Cats are smart, and when right is right and wrong is wrong, we don't need to be herded. We don't need a leader. That's the nice thing about this movement, is it's not led by just one person or one group or one ideology. I call it kind of surfing the wave. You know, every once in a while you see something and you run towards it, and it maybe didn't turn out to be what we thought it was, but now we all run this way because we see where it went, or they were on to us and they did something different. So, you know, we're collectively pursuing what's right, and people who have their own agenda, their own selfish reasons for being involved, have a hard time staying at the front of it. And I feel like those of us who are in it for the right reasons have a bit more of a clairvoyance, I guess. We can kind of see the trends and see where it's going, because we're not trying to steer it. We're just trying to read it, you know? And people who are trying to steer it a certain way are going to lead people off a cliff. And we've seen that happen a lot. Nima Brewer.
Yeah. We're not fans.
120, Kentucky 120 United group, by the way. Groups that pretend that they're not racist, you know, and that's the thing too. Okay, I want to say something else too, because I'm liberal. I guess you guys figured that out. I was a Democrat, but the Democrats weren't progressive enough for me, so I'm now an independent. But we white Democrats, white liberal people, tend to think that we're not guilty of racism and behaviors that perpetuate racism because, you know, we're not racist, right? So we tend to be some of the worst offenders, really, because we ignore the signs. We refuse to do the work in our own homes and in our own communities and in our own heads. And we have to be open to that kind of criticism and those uncomfortable conversations that anti-CRT laws are trying to prevent. So it's all really simple, even though it's a lot. It's all really pretty in a nutshell. When you get there, and you're just like, this is that.
Yeah, I can see you've been in this a while, and like you got to the point where you were like, really? And yeah, because you got so much information there, and then you've got experience that led you to the information, because you had the firsthand experience of a child going through that system, and you're like, this isn't working right.
Right, and it's common sense stuff. What
your journey? You've taken me on your journey.
Well, yeah, and it is a lot, but I don't want to do this forever is another thing why I come on kind of intense, and people are like, well, it wasn't the right time, or you pushed too hard, gay, or whatever. You do too much. Yvonne likes to tell me I do too much, and I do, but I feel like if I do 10 things and one of them sticks, even if the other 9 turned out to be a waste, it's my time to waste. So, you know, let's throw 10 things out there and see what sticks, because sometimes actually 3 and 4 and 5 stick. And then you're like, wow, we've got a base here to fall back on. When this thing is done, we can pick this part up. And it's all really kind of just dress rehearsals. And every time we have that dress rehearsal, we get a new system built. And then when something happens, like I told you, I repurpose that page. It's a lot easier to repurpose a page than it is to start a page from scratch. So, you know, we've got all these tools, and we've got street credibility, even though they want to make us think we don't, because that's how they win. And 2, they like to make it taboo for people to trust and believe the things that we're saying are true. So it takes 10 times longer, really, for our messages to get out, because they've been tainted by people who pretend to be allies. But I think it gets easier every time. And like I said, I don't want to do this forever. So let's just do it well and call it a day. You know, I'd love nothing more than for Dear JCBS to no longer need to exist. And frankly, the only reason that it did need to exist is because PTA wasn't doing their job.
Yeah, we were shocked at that. Rose and I attended that PTA meeting, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's going to be so many parents here that are upset and asking questions. And then there was nobody. And I sat there and I was like, really? And then there was this odd moment where it hung there. I even thought maybe the PTA members would say something. And not a one. There was like 19. At one point, there's like 21 people on there, 25. And then they came, and a couple of them came and went. It kind of settled around 19. And I don't know how many were on the PTA. Generally, I've avoided all of this because I'm not a click person. And I've always looked at the PTA as that click, and I don't want to be a part of that. And so I kind of avoided that whole thing. But I was sitting there and I was like, no one is really going to say anything. No one's asking questions. Everyone's just going to roll along with it. And so I, my mouth opened and the words came out and my questions came out. And then Rose said her piece, and then I said a couple more things, and the principal was like, okay, well, I'll get right on that. And you know, he's writing it down, and then they kept excusing him. The PTA kept excusing him. If you're done now, sir, you can go. You don't have to stay. Like they weren't expecting him to stay. And then
Let's move on to financials is what they said. Let's move on to financials.
He didn't want to leave. He stayed on. He's like, I'll just hang around and see, you know, if I'm needed or if anything comes to be, I'll hang around. And he lingered, and they seemed uncomfortable with him lingering. And I was like, this must be really odd. And
that's correct. That's the skill that they know how to use in JCPS. They have their strategies to chill the conversation. That sounds like what he was doing.
So he stayed present in case he needed
really
to
do, guys. I have got to get off. I got a parent.
Sure. Okay, guys, just to let you know, I put that story where Ed Choice is saying, why can't we get charter schools? So that was a good moment for us.
It was.
So you sent it?
I did it. I texted it to the three of you.
Okay.
Thank you. Hey, before you jump off, Rose and Mel, since we kind of started this interview in the middle, would you mind if I just kind of record an introduction that I can maybe stick at the beginning, and we edit out into a little bit of a program that we share with the public, the things that we think are the key takeaways, especially the part where we had Tina on. But do you mind if I just kind of do a little quick intro and ask you guys to say who you are, and then I can use that, put that at the beginning?
Yeah. What do we say as to regards to who we are?
Let me, Yvonne and I'll kind of kick it off like we're starting our radio show, and then and then we'll ask.
We have a radio show on Thursdays.
Oh, I need to know. You need to send me that too, Yvonne.
Okay. We've been sloppy the last few months, but yeah.
It's pretty easy to just take the board meetings and the speakers at the board meetings and turn them into a program. So I just put a little buffer at the beginning and the end and say, this is what you're listening to. So it hasn't been a whole lot of work, because there's plenty of fodder out there.
Oh my God, those board meetings and those insane people. Yeah. Holy moly.
Rose and I call that porch fodder.
So let's do that real quick so Rose can go parent, and I'm sure all of us probably need to get back to our stuff. So Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Save Our Schools with Dear JCPS. I'm your host, Gay Adelman, and
I'm Yvonne Rivera, the perennial sidekick.
so today we have with us two of the parents who were the founders of the Live and Learn group on Facebook. If you haven't seen it yet, please go check it out. Tell us a little bit. We've got Mel Tanner and Rose. What is your last name, Rose?
Reams.
Reams?
Yes.
And would you ladies mind telling us a little bit about your organization that you've started and what you hope to accomplish?
Rosie, do you want to go first?
We got sick of sitting around and doing nothing. And we decided on some values and non-political things that we're not using our children as pawns in the political madness. I think we've come up with a great idea for hybrid schooling. I'm a mother of 2 elementary school children, and I want to see changes. And that's why I'm here.
Mel, do you
And
want to add to that?
yeah, I'm Mel, and I'm a parent of 2 JCPS students, one in elementary, one in middle school, and I watched how we opened our schools, and I thought that we would be prepared, and I can see that our quarantine policies are not great, and I can see that children are at risk, and we need to make some changes in the way we're navigating this pandemic with our kids. We need stronger quarantine policies, and I would like to see hybrid education back in place to keep our classrooms limited for contacts and keep them safe. It would address a lot of the issues that I think we're seeing, and a lot of parents I'm seeing, they have those concerns and they've expressed them. And I wanted to speak up and actually do something that we'd like to see the parents' voices heard. Please speak up, join us, help us. Your voice could make the difference, even though you don't think it will.
Absolutely. And we also have House Rep Tina Bojanowski on our program today. We're going to hear a little bit from her about the upcoming special session and what preparations we can be making and how parents in particular can show up in Frankfort and help advocate for the policies that need to change. In particular, the local control that needs to come back to our district leaders so that we can implement what's best for our students, because one size does not work for all. And we've had those controls taken away from us. So thank you, ladies, for joining us on today's program. And we're going to be in Frankfort, right? Is that right? We're going to be in Frankfort Monday at 9 a.m. I'm sorry, I said
Not Monday.
Tuesday.
At 10.
the first business day of the week, which in my mind is a Monday, but since it's Labor Day weekend, we're going to be in Frankfort on Tuesday at 9 a.m. and hope to see other parents and students. You can get educational credit like a field trip if you bring your students and fill out the form and notify your school that you're taking your child on a field trip to see history in the making and watch how laws are made here in Kentucky. And Kentucky is all eyes are on Kentucky nationally as this special session unfolds. So it's going to be a great opportunity for children to come and see the process in history in the making. So look for us around 9 a.m. We're going to meet at the parking garage. The top level parking garage has a little covered area where the elevators come out. So look for us around that area around 9 a.m. and come out anytime, as long as the special session is going on. Your presence does make a difference. So again, thanks everybody for being on our program. We sure appreciate it.
Ooh,
Sound good?
sounds great.
All
I
right.
was
Well,
totally nervous.
what?
I was totally nervous. I shouldn't have gone first.
You
I
want to
think
do
you
it
did a
again?
bang up job. What are you talking about?
Trying to fix my hair.
You can do it again, and I'll use the best of the 2 takes for your intro. How's that?
Girl, I'm okay.
You know
So,
what? You'll just get better and better with practice. If this is your first conversation, the next one will get
I hear
easier.
last
See,
time
we
I got
can see that Gay has done this a lot.
Yes, and the media training, we need to do a little bit of media training, but it's pretty easy really, but we need to be prepared for the possibility that you're going to be talking to media. And I have a few little tricks that I can share with you. We can go over those Monday morning. Yeah.
Love that.
Awesome, because they're not our friends, and they will look for an easy lead and an easy story as opposed to actually doing the research. And they're just like the red meat chasers that we're up against. Maybe not quite that bad, I should say, but they do just look for an easy, quick story that they can put in the can and move on to the next story. And sometimes they don't appreciate the nuance, and then their stories cause more harm than good. So we have to make sure that they pick up on the nuance. So.
All right.
Thank you all.
Off to parents.
Rose has to go, but in the text, I sent a text to all three of you.
Okay.
Let's hook them up with Amanda and Emily. Yes. Their parents one's at King. Is the other one at Eisenhower?
I don't know. You talking about M, where her kids are? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll tell us.
But that's also something we need to do, is make sure that our list is robust and that we even have like someone from every school in our group, so that we can, just like with JCTA, they've got PR representatives that at every building. And they have a kind of a network that they can reach out to teachers to communicate the things that need to be taking place, although they don't
use it.
It's micromanaged, so they can't use it the way that it should be used, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean we can't create our own. And I think we need to go back to the times of phone trees and directories and the old fashioned, let's get out the phone list and start calling, and I'll call this number and then they call the next number. And when we got to mobilize, we need a way to do that that's not reliant upon a gatekeeper or a certain individual who might be like driving from Delaware to Kentucky when something needs to happen or something. I don't know, because that's going to be me tomorrow. And I don't want to cause anything to slow down, because you all are waiting on me, and vice versa. We need to be able to keep things moving. So the way cats would do.
All right, ladies, I gotta run.
I know you do. Thank you.
Keep me posted on everything. If you got to edit some stuff out of me, that's cool. I'm not going to be offended. Go ahead and do that. If you could get rid of this gray.
Oh, this is radio.
Well, and I'm an amateur. Okay, all these skills I have, I had to learn just out of necessity. So I'm not a pro. Trust me. My background is, but not video it.
All right. Well,
thank you. Good to meet you.
You guys have a great night.
You too.
Have a great night.
Bye, dear.
Bye bye.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Gabe.
Mel, if there's anything I can do to help you with your group renaming or what have you, I'm unfortunately.
Actually, since she's gone and everyone else is gone, I'm going to actually bring it up and see if it'll let me, because I was trying to do that the other day. I thought the same thing you did, and did it kick me out of the meeting?